Good morning. I have the great honor and the immense pleasure of introducing U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who has so kindly agreed to share his vast political experience and his views about the situation of the ocean, the situation of science and scientific knowledge, and his views on ocean science with us today. So please welcome U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, all of you, for the privilege of being able to share a few thoughts with you this morning. You are my dear friends who've been involved in this for so many years, a lifetime of your efforts, and I'm grateful for the privilege of being able to share a few thoughts with you this morning. They will be neither soft nor pretty. Never in my memory, and I've been more than 50, 60 years in public life, never has your knowledge and your expertise been more needed and more relevant than today. And never have we known, certainly in the modern world, a time where the life work of scientists is so openly scorned by those who claim, or ignored by those who claim to lead. So we're living in a very dangerous, fact-free, extremist vortex where people in high places and public responsibility simply dismiss or somehow besmirch scientific knowledge and findings of grave significance, in my judgment, and I think the judgment of most of you there. You know, Mark Twain famously said that a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. And now, obviously, it is a nanosecond that it can go fully around the world, and it does. I had a wonderful colleague in the United States Senate, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who famously said, a very distinguished senator, who famously said that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts. And it seems to me, bringing a little history to the table, that in 1755, when the great earthquake took place in Lisbon, and there was this massive tsunami, and 40,000, 50,000 people were wiped out, all the churches of the city were destroyed. A great debate ensued throughout Europe and in the environs of Europe, in which Immanuel Kant, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Francois Voltaire all argued about the cause of this and the meaning of it. And this was a time when, as a result, seismology emerged and people began to understand things better. It was the age of reason and the age of enlightenment. And flat earthism was put to rest. That's not true today. We have a resurgence of people who want other people, for purely political and selfish reasons, to believe that, 2 and 2 does not make 4, it makes 5, or some other absurd outcome. So we're dealing with a very different moment. And you all have helped to define the challenge that we face, and a planet that is increasingly in extremis by any standard of legitimate thinking or evaluation. And the ocean, we all know, it's a great part of my life, going back to childhood in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and all of my life I've been in contact with the ocean. And the ocean is, of course, critical to life on Earth. You cannot deal with the crisis of climate without also dealing with the crisis of the ocean, and vice versa. Can't deal with the ocean if you don't understand the acidification and the warming and the melting and the rise of sea level, all of which you understand. You have studied this. You've helped all of us to have a sense of the direction we're moving in. So the ocean is warming at this absolutely extraordinary, alarming rate. It's 101 degrees Fahrenheit off of Key West last year in the summer in the ocean. And we know that fisheries are threatened. In some of the largest countries of the world, a new middle class has discovered sushi. It may sound weird, but the blue tuna that provided and are flown every night in a 747 to some major capital to distribute the tuna is disappearing. I rewrote the fishing laws of the United States with Ted Stevens, a Republican from Alaska, several times. And we confronted every form of fishing, longlining and dragging and you name it. And the reality is that we're now abusing all the things we learned 25, 30, 40 years ago. And it's clear that the warming of the ocean is completely scientifically linked to the intensity of damage being done around the world, whether it's from increased moisture and the massive cloudbursts that produce the flooding, the destruction of habitat, the fact that whole communities are wiped out by greater intensity in storms that come quicker and faster. We spent $165 billion last year on a couple of storms, cleaning up after the mess, not trying to prevent the mess. And that's an absurd conclusion. So what we need to do is understand the moisture that is rising and will continue to rise creates greater humidity in addition. And those of you who have recently thought about wet bulb global temperature will understand that there's a huge threat to humanity if that increased moisture continues at the rate that it is today. So I have to share with you that all of this evidence has been gathered, obviously, without regard for ideology, without any political party being attached to it. Everything that we did in the Biden administration to try to focus on climate, to use the IRA, to provide incentives to deploy wind and solar, which is now being destroyed in the capacity to be deployed. Everything we did there came from science, from physics, from mathematics, some biology, some chemistry. And you know this better than anybody. So, my friends, this is a critical moment for all of us on this planet. God gave us this great capacity to reason, to think, and we have a whole bunch of folks around the world who've decided they don't need to or won't, or who are being seduced into believing in some mythology about a hoax or worse. Mother Nature is sending us the most powerful messages that in our lifetime we have ever known. And it is clear that the ecosystem itself, which is what the ocean is together with the rest of the planet, you know this, and we have now a biodiversity treaty, and we have now other commitments and major efforts with respect to fishing in the ocean. The Our Ocean Conference, which I started when I was Secretary of State, has now had its 10th iteration. We've raised over $100 billion of initiatives and cash to create a green corridor for shipping, to deal with shipping and changing the propulsion of those ships. I just came from Norway at Nor Shipping, where we are discussing the next IMO iteration in October, which has to, I hope, determine that they will go for net zero and require people to move to alternative fuels. Because shipping, if it was a country globally, would be equivalent to the 8th largest nation in the world that creates emissions. So everything is connected to everything. And now it seems to me we have to stand up. We have to fight and push back in a way that we haven't had to in a long time. And I'll just very quickly wrap up sort of telling you a quick story. When I returned from the war in Vietnam, the first thing that I did was join up in something called Earth Day, 1970. And we organized people around the United States. We brought 21 million Americans out of their homes on one single day to demand clean air, clean water, sustainability. And it was a time when you couldn't see across the city of Los Angeles. You couldn't see across the city of New York. The Cuyahoga River in Ohio famously caught on fire. And we responded. We didn't just create, though, a meeting. We didn't just bring 21 million people together for one day. What we did was we made it a political movement. We targeted the 12 worst votes in the United States Congress. And in the election of that year, we defeated 7 of the 12. Guess what happened? Suddenly, the politicians said, oh my God, this is a voting issue. And as a result of that, they passed the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Coastal Zone Management Act, the Endangered Species Act, and we created the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, which is now under assault. So we made great progress. People maybe went to sleep and went home, I don't know. But obviously that progress is threatened by practices of development, pollution, over 500 dead zones around the world in the ocean because of the overload of nitrates or other pollution. We're really just challenging life itself on the planet. And if we can't organize better around that conclusion, then shame on us. So I believe we need to reiterate. You, I know, will come out with a statement from this Congress. We need to, and I will be announcing over the course of the next weeks and months, efforts that lead into next year to bring science together at a larger scale and bring corporations that are brave and want to step up, as some have, and bring people, political leaders and others, those involved in this over a long period of time, those of us who brought about Paris and who then went to Glasgow and to Sharm el-Sheikh and to Dubai. So let me just leave you with this thought, because I don't want you to think, oh my God, this is so dramatic and so incontestable that there's not much I can do. That's not true. We can win this fight. Those aren't just words that I'm throwing at you today. We can win this fight. We know from what we promised to do, what corporations promised to do, including oil and gas, at Glasgow, Sharm el-Sheikh, and Dubai, we promised that we were going to transition away from fossil fuel, that we were going to do so according to the science, and we were going to do so reaching net zero 2050 and laying out the plans to be able to do that, and that we were going to establish a sense of urgency that made us accelerate in this decade. Well, a whole bunch of countries are not only not accelerating, they're reversing. And we know that China, which I've negotiated with for a number of years now, and my friend, and I mean my friend, Xi Jinping, my counterpart on the other side, he and I managed to find a way with the leaders of, with President Biden and President Xi to come together and create a union that helped to create Paris and helped to push us forward, so that at the final meeting in Dubai, China agreed to accelerate in this decade. China agreed to put on its NDC, all greenhouse gases, which includes methane, which obviously had been left out for a long period of time. So we made progress, at least verbally. We set a construct by which we all need to act and to guide ourselves. And China, just for example, has now manufactured and deployed more renewables than all of the rest of the world put together. And I am absolutely convinced that while they haven't said this publicly, not only have they peaked in their fossil fuel emissions, but I believe they will be going down because of this massive amount of renewable that is being deployed. We can do that in the rest of the world, folks. And we need to do it because those people who are arguing that you ought to use a combined cycle, combined cycle turbine, and that gas, LNG, is going to be a critical part of the transition, which it is, are not willing to acknowledge that there's a danger zone when you get to 2030 if they're not reducing the emissions, because then you have to get on a tighter scale of reduction. So our challenge could not be more clear. And we have to shake people out of a stupor. We have to get people to understand, what do you want to do? Just sit around while habitat is destroyed and insurance is pulling out of insuring in parts of America, certainly, in Alabama, Louisiana, Florida. You can't get the insurance, and it's totally distorting the economy. So there are billions of dollars being spent, as I said earlier, not to prevent these things from happening or for the cure, but simply to clean up the mess after it happens. I mentioned the story of Earth Day because we have to get back to grassroots here. Those of us who are democracies have to be willing to be more militant and demanding that we're going to respond in a way that preserves life on this planet and preserves a planet capable of delivering life to future generations. That is exactly how serious this challenge is. We have to build on Paris and on Dubai. The IEA has told us if we in fact kept our promises, if we did all the things we promised to do in Glasgow, and then in Sharm el-Sheikh, and then in Dubai, if we did those things, the Earth's temperature increase would be at 1.7 or 1.8 degrees. Just think about that. And that's without a breakthrough in technology for firm energy that can be delivered by batteries, sodium ion batteries that are now coming online that are better. That's without a breakthrough on either hydrogen or methanol or ammonia. I mean, these things can all happen, but we have to push back against people who just don't want to honor science, who don't want to accept the realities of where we are today. I am convinced we are now headed to 2.5 degrees or somewhere in that vicinity. But guess what? When I took on the job of climate envoy for President Biden, we were headed to 4 degrees, 3.74 degrees. So we've already shown we can move it, move the needle. Now we have to persuade people that it is far, far cheaper, far less public money spent to respond to this crisis now rather than to wait and pretend to try to do it down the road. You all are the most important voices in this fight. You have credibility of being apolitical, non-politician, and of having this virtue of science, which we have to restore in its rightful place of decision-making on a global basis. So thank you for what you're doing. We will be, I'm sure, meeting and talking in the days and months ahead, but this is the fight of a lifetime. And this is no moment for cowardice or retreat or for people who put the dollar sign or whatever their currency is ahead of humanity and the reality of the choices that we have been given. Thank you all very, very much for letting me share a few thoughts.
Thank you very much, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, for delivering this, not keynote address, but this for sharing your views with us. So thank you so much. I have just a few announcements, which are more practical for today and tomorrow. Regarding today, as was said yesterday by my co-chair, Jean-Pierre Gattuso, we are going to release the manifesto that you are kindly invited to sign. So this manifesto will be physically present on the board, just out of room 1, in front of this room, and you will have the possibility to sign it. But I also invite you to sign it electronically, so you are going to receive an email with a link so that you have the possibility to sign this manifesto. Second, no other announcement for today. There is no rain planned today, so we should be able to eat quietly out of the building on the quay. Third, for tomorrow, we are going to start at 8:30. We will stop the Congress at 12, and we have some challenges to leave the place quite quickly so that it can be cleaned and reorganized for the events that are going to take place on Saturday. So we will stop the Congress sharp tomorrow at 12. Due to some security reasons, there will be no possibility for you to bring luggage with you. So please make your arrangements with the hotels where you are for those who are going to leave tomorrow. I also say that tomorrow there will be no lunch boxes. lunch boxes today, but no lunch boxes tomorrow. And my last announcement is that for tomorrow, during the keynote speeches, we will have the pleasure to welcome the minister who is in charge of ecological transition, biodiversity, forest, the sea, and fisheries. We could not attend the opening session, but we definitely wanted to have an interaction with the Congress. So she will be there probably tomorrow at 9 a.m. With that, wish you a fruitful day and nice keynote speeches.